Welcome to the Ron Greenwald Show. We bring you stories, insights, and expertise from leading professionals on the life-changing journey that is estate planning. This podcast is for everyone. We will guide you through our team approach to the AGE, the Aging Safari, and crafting the legacy you wish to leave to your children and grandchildren. We will empower you with the choices to enhance your life now and ensure that your family is able to come together for generations to come. Together, we will make a positive difference. Let's get started. Welcome to the Ron Greenwald Podcast, Episode 2 with Marguerite Lorenz, partner, Lorenz Private Trustees, entrepreneur, advocate. Really, I want to focus on the advocacy that you do, and that's really the direction you're going to go. So talk a little bit about how the advocacy has played such a huge part in your life.
Sure. So when you become someone's fiduciary, they can name you in their documents. And basically how that works is you meet with your estate planning attorney. You select the person that's going to be your successor trustee. But it's not just the trust document. There are other documents in an estate plan. So just very briefly, there's a trust, a will, a power of attorney for finance. Usually it's called a durable power of attorney. And then you have an advanced healthcare directive. And you have to select the people that are going to serve when you die. Well, that's just the most famous triggering event, right?
But we know there's others.
There is others. There's two others: incapacity and resignation. Resignation might be like I had a 94-year-old client who'd been a bookkeeper for her whole professional life. And when she couldn't balance her checkbook to her statement, that was her signal that it was time for her to let her successor trustees begin working. So that was someone who was consciously choosing to let their successor trustee go to work. And that person had to meet with the attorney, get a resignation document, and then the successor trustee signed the acceptance. So it's not just picking someone, it's granting them authority, and that authority is carried in the legal documents, right? So even for a trust, you name someone to be your trustee someday. You're the first trustee of your own trust, but you can't do that forever. And if you become incapacitated, then two physicians need to examine you and write letters that say you're no longer able to manage your own affairs. And by the way, it's your document. You could decide it's one doctor, you could decide it's three. You know, those kinds of preferences, those kinds of things are up to you, and you discuss with your attorney how that looks for you. But you have to have some mechanism where someone else could take over when you're done. And so in my work, I've been named in documents, and when the crisis occurs, incapacity, resignation, or death, someone might inform me. Maybe I've been serving that person because they chose to resign and then they lose capacity and then they die. There's lots of stories, and we'll be sharing stories as we go on together. But the idea is that there's some triggering event. I don't have the job until that event occurs and I am named in those documents.
And who's naming you? It's just who names you in those documents?
I've had such a variety of clients, people who have plenty of money, people that don't have so much. I've been doing this work for over 20 years. And by the way, for the record, actually, I would want our listeners to go ahead and visit the Independent Trustee Alliance website. If you're looking for a trustee and you are in the market for finding someone who can serve you, no matter where you are in the country, then you want to visit trusteealliance.com. That's trustee, TRUSTEE, alliance, ALLIANCE.com.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up, because let's talk about that and your passion and mission for the Independent Trustee Alliance. I think that's a good, before we get into the case study, talk a little bit about where you see that going.
Well, I believe there are a lot of people who found themselves in this work. Either they were taking care of a family member or a friend, right? And they ended up having to go to court to get something done, or they just ended up with this crazy job. And it's crazy because it takes everything you've got. Everything you've ever learned in your life can be used in this job. And you have to be a bit organized. You have to be forward thinking and plan ahead for things. You have to anticipate the needs of your client. And I know there are a lot of people listening who already do that naturally. And there is such a need for more people who are trustworthy, who are willing to be held accountable, who know they have to account for every single transaction every year for everyone who benefits from that particular trust. And so if you know that about yourself, you might be interested in this as a second career. This is not usually somebody's first career. This is the kind of career that comes after you've had some life experience and you've had your those experiences that are good and some not so good experiences, especially with your own finances and so on. You really have learned a lot. This is a way to apply what you've learned. So again, I would suggest visiting the Independent Trustee Alliance. Take a look at the website. There's a lot of education available. When you join, there's actually a recording about First Trust Administration that I created that's very, very helpful for anyone who's doing this for the first time. If you're a family member trustee, this will be the only trust you ever do. Get some training. Don't go in blind. You don't want to lose your family relationships. It's not worth it.
Having been in this space for 15 years, I just can't advocate enough not to name a child as successor trustee, almost under all circumstances. It's just, there's the liability that comes with it now, the accounting that comes with it now, the time that comes with it, the requirements. And if you have siblings, why even risk even an inkling of disharmony? Why would you want to go through that?
Well, I think some people feel the duty bound to serve their parents. I think others are kind of looking forward to the opportunity of finally saying no to their siblings about something. I think some people are not sure that that's going to happen to them because everybody gets along right now. But I just want to remind everyone that we're all humans. We're all doing the best we can. And if you could afford to have a professional, and by the way, very often the professional doesn't cost nearly as much as a family member does. Why? Because we have systems in place, because we know what we're doing, because we've done this a lot. We've done this many, many times. And the only case you're learning on is the very important one. It's for your parents. So I understand the feeling of obligation. I understand that you may want to supervise or you're worried about what will happen to the money. In California, we actually have licensed professionals. So look up somebody's license. You can find that at fiduciary.ca.gov. You can see if they've had any disciplinary issues with their license. You can see how much money they're managing. You get some sense of that they're a real business. It's not a hobby, okay? But I understand the sense of obligation. I also want to tell you that you could serve as someone's agent for healthcare. You could be that medical decision maker and let somebody else deal with the tax, legal, and financial stuff. So there are ways to be of service to your folks, to love them, and to make sure they're getting what they need without also having the liability and the obligation.
So with that, we're going to have Marguerite read a case, and I'm going to hand over to her.
Okay.
And then we're going to again, as you're listening, again, I encourage you to now really listen, because not a guarantee, but I'm pretty much going to assure you that you're going to find yourself going, wow, it's either that's my family, that's me, or I know somebody in that situation. Right.
Today's story. Joey, 52, and Esmeralda, 42, have recently decided to move in together. Joey has never been married. Esmeralda has 2 adult children from her previous marriage, one of whom lives with her. This 18-year-old, Maddie, will be attending college nearby, and Joey likes her quite a bit. Joey signs a lease for a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment and signs a check for the first semester of tuition. Joey gives Esmeralda a credit card with her name on it. She takes the new credit card and decorates the apartment. Esmeralda buys new plates and silverware, towels, and bedding. She buys a bar on wheels and spent $6,000 buying booze and accessories. Joey sets up a corner of the dining room as his office. His wealth is in his stock portfolio, as he sold his construction business 2 years ago, right before he met Esmeralda. Joey's stock portfolio is worth about $3 million, and he has led Esmeralda to believe that this is all he has. He also has a few partnerships, in addition to some gold at a facility in his name. Esmeralda keeps telling him that she is happy and doesn't need to know about his private things. After a few months, Joey notices an odd pattern in Esmeralda's spending. She spends to the credit card limit of $10,000 each month. half of which she takes out in cash. He doesn't mind how much she spends, and he doesn't ask what the cash is for. She's a great cook, and the house is always clean. Maddie hasn't been home for the last couple of weeks. And Esmeralda hasn't said anything about the kid. Maybe Maddie has made some new friends, he wonders. Esmeralda comes home one day and asks what happens to her if something happens to Joey. Joey explains that he's not the marrying type, which makes Esmeralda angry. Esmeralda explains that she has given everything in her life to be with Joey, and he needs to do something to make her feel more secure. So let's discuss it.
Well, let's just give the broad brush stroke, the opportunities here for estate planning.
Yes. Well, Joey says he's not the marrying type. I mean, he's obviously had opportunities in the past, and they're renting a place. So there may not be any real property involved. But what happens if something happens to Joey? What about that gold in the facility? What about these partnerships that he may have, or his stock accounts, right? His brokerage accounts. So it's not just that he gives Esmeralda money every month and she's socking something away, right? I mean, wow, $5,000 a month, right, in her savings account. And who knows, maybe she's spending that on her kids. Maybe she's spending it on herself. We don't know. But that idea that if something happens to Joey, what happens to the rent being paid and so on? It doesn't sound like Esmeralda works at all.
No. So what type of documents should Joey put in place to protect himself?
Well, let's say for the moment that Joey's okay with Esmeralda making medical decisions for him, right? So that would be the advanced healthcare directive. And that might mean that Esmeralda's named first. He likes Maddie. He likes Esmeralda's daughter, but she's only 18. It's a big responsibility to put on a young person, especially if you're expecting her to leave a college classroom to come be by your side at the hospital. And maybe he has partners. Maybe he has other people that he cares about and that he's friends with. So Joey really needs to think about 3 people, first, second, and third, that he could name comfortably in his documents. And sometimes that comes when you meet with the attorney and the attorney's asking you questions about who you trust and why you trust them. And maybe exploring that a little bit. Please don't surprise anyone with the job of being your trustee. I mean, really communicating with them is super important because they need to know where to find your stuff. He might even have crypto. A guy who's got gold in a facility might have the kind of assets that have a pass key. Where does that pass key live? How do you find it? If you don't get it exactly right, that value, that crypto is gone forever. So we need to think about our digital assets. We need to think about our physical assets. We need to think about our money assets. What if Joey, who has an office in the dining room, has a podcast? Who owns the podcast if something happens to Joey? And is Esmeralda really the right person to deal with those things? Is he worried that maybe his coffee will start tasting funny if she's the one in charge? I don't know. So the idea is that Joey has some power here, and he's not fully exercising his power without having some written documents in place for himself.
So Joey has never been married in the storyline. Let's switch it up a little bit and say Joey has been married and has children. I mean, that really...
Does Joey know all the children that he's had?
Yeah.
Is Joey in touch with, or does he spend any money on the previous girlfriend who might be the mother of his children? And maybe she's the beneficiary of a life insurance policy that he has on himself. It's hard to say, and it's hard to say also if Joey and Esmeralda will last as a couple. We don't know. But they've been together a while, and they were together a while before they decided to move in together. I've heard from a lot of people that they say, living together is just easier than being married. I don't know about that. When you marry someone, there are some presumptions made in the legal world in terms of your devotion and loyalty to each other. There's an expectation, for instance, that someone could have your IRA because they're your spouse. So if you didn't name a beneficiary for your individual retirement account, as an example, your spouse is the natural person who that would roll over to. Oh, but you're just cohabitating. Health insurance works the same way. If you have health insurance, how would Joey put Esmeralda on his health insurance without being married to her? And so marriage has a lot of benefits to it. It is a contractual agreement. There are expectations involved with that. And if you live with someone, you can have a cohabitation agreement. You could have an estate plan that includes that person. You could even have what they used to have is a domestic registration, right? You register that this is your partner. Again, that was for health insurance purposes back in the day. I don't know if people are still using those now.
I haven't heard about that. I mean, if somebody's married, a second marriage or third marriage today, you can have two separate. He can have his trust, the Joey trust, and Esmeralda can have the Esmeralda trust.
Right.
Besides a family trust.
Right. And it makes a lot of sense to do that because there could be assets that Joey, let's say we're going to use Joey's example of his gold and his partnerships. Those are his. He might want to make the stock account communal. He might want the beneficiary of his brokerage account to be Esmeralda's trust. Because what if Esmeralda's incapacitated when Joey dies? Right? So now Joey has set up a way for Esmeralda to have some income and to be taken care of. So that satisfies her need, right? What happens to me if something happens to you? And they do each need their own estate plan in order to make that happen. Then when Esmeralda dies, maybe it's possible that same brokerage account now gets split between Maddie and her brother. And so now we have an orderly way of dealing with this. But if tomorrow Joey drops dead of a heart attack, how long will Esmeralda have in that apartment? Not very long. She might have socked away some of the cash, maybe, but she won't be able to use his credit card anymore unless she's willing to commit fraud and pretend to be Joey. I mean, there's a lot of problems here that happen when someone suddenly dies and there's no mechanism, there's no way to actually manage those things.
In that space that you're just talking about, passwords.
Okay, let's talk about passwords. I have a thing about passwords, and that is that no one should pretend to be anybody else. If you want someone to have access to your bank account, okay, they can be a co-signer and not be the owner of the account. You can have a durable power of attorney. You can grant your power of attorney agent, is what we call them, or attorney in fact, access to that bank account. And that's lawful and it's legal and it works. But if you make someone a co-owner of your bank account, guess what? You die and that person gets all of the money that's in that account. Better yet, they have a medical issue, a bankruptcy issue, a divorce issue, some kind of debt issue. That account you share now becomes part of what the creditors can access. So there's a very good reason to have estate planning be that managing document, to have that way, that operating system on your assets so that things are protected long term. What if Joey decides that he doesn't really want Esmeralda to have anything but income, but when Maddie reaches a certain age, she would get to have a lump sum of money so she could move on with her life? Well, he can do that in his own separate estate plan. And he doesn't necessarily have to share the details with Esmeralda unless he makes Esmeralda his successor.
So what I'm hearing is, again, the listener, the estate plan is your life plan.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's your
real,
foundation.
Real functioning document that can dictate the what ifs.
Yeah. And the thing is that some people who've been through an estate planning process know there could be 60 or 80 pages in an estate plan. It's not because all those things will happen, but it's because you have preferences about how you want things handled if they do happen. And you also don't want to have to update your document all the time because it costs money to create an estate plan document. So if you spent a couple $1,000s making an estate plan document and a few months of your life thinking about those decisions, what you want to do is update those documents every few years. And you're going to pay to do that. But there'll be other changes. The laws will continue to change. Your life will continue to grow. So let's move this little family ahead 10 years, okay? Now Esmeralda's 52 and Joey's 62. He could start collecting Social Security. Maybe he became disabled. So he's not making as much money as he was making before, and he's collecting some Social Security. Maddie now is 28 years old, and maybe she's married. And maybe they've gotten closer and closer. Maybe they decide to get married now that they know each other and things have kind of changed. And Joey really likes the way Esmeralda takes care of him. You still need an estate plan.
Oh, my gosh.
Right? Because you get married now, and now having the estate plan isn't enough. You actually have to make sure all those assets are titled properly. Into which estate? In which estate plan? As let's say Esmeralda and Joey each got their own separate plans done. They can combine them at a later date. They can decide to move all those assets into the same trust.
So that's the 10 years, advanced 10 years, and Joey has purchased a home, not renting anymore.
Okay.
So he's the only one. He's the owner of the home.
I'm the only one on title.
Only one on title.
Yeah, it's his house.
So again, this becomes real world to me, and what I do in real estate is the second wife or the second situation. She's not on title, but she has the right to live in the home until her death.
That's called a life estate, usually
Life
in the
estate.
documents. Yeah.
But Joey, and again, I'm changing the situation a little bit. Joey does have some children from a prior marriage.
Okay.
And that one of their children is going through tough times. He needs the money. Okay. Joey bought the home. He passes away.
We're talking about Joey Jr.?
Joey Jr.
Okay.
Joey Jr. is going, I want my dad's home sold because I need the money, and Esmeralda's got to go. So have you worked with those scenarios?
So let's say for the moment that in Joey's estate plan, where Joey's the owner of the home, he's created a life estate for Esmeralda. He's got enough money with his other assets and the income from his partnerships and maybe the sale of his gold so that the utilities and the property tax and insurance and everything is paid for Esmeralda as long as she lives at the house. If something happens to her, like she needs full-time care or she needs to move to assisted living and the house is vacant for 6 months or more, then the house is to be sold. That's basically what the life estate says. And by the way, again, you can talk to your attorney about what you think you need in your life estate for the person that you love and you want to protect. But we'll use those terms for now. And the son is really pressing. Well, the son, Joey Jr. in this story, wasn't given anything at Joey's passing. Joey set everything aside for Esmeralda. Does Joey have the right to do that? He sure does. And I know that is upsetting for some people who might be listening because they want to know what their parents have. They want to know what their parents' plan is and so on. And I have to tell you, it's their money. It's their money. Now, you could talk to your parents after you get your own estate plan done. And you get your plan done, you go, hey, I just did this. And I want to let you know that I've considered you in my plan. In case something happens to me, I love you. I want to look after you. What's in your plan? And then you can have a conversation about it. But that may be for another conversation.
So one of the things that you advocate for is to always go to see the attorney, but don't go in and relying on the attorney to ask you the questions. You should go in prepped to grill the attorney.
Well, I wouldn't say grill the attorney. Look, what you really want is a relationship with your attorney. It's not really just about getting this one set of documents done. Because keep in mind, the idea is that estate planning should match your life. So through your lifespan, you have an estate plan span, right? You're going in periodically to update your documents. Why? Because things change. Maybe the person you named as your successor trustee has already passed away. Maybe that person is really not the capable person you thought they were, or something's happened to them. They're so busy now. I'll give you an example. So I was working with a client, and she named me in her documents as her backup, meaning I'm third on her list, okay? Number 1 and number 2 are her 2 children. So we've got child number 1, child number 2. Daughter, child number 1, decides mom needs looking after now. Mom didn't decide that. Mom calls me up one day and she says, I don't think I want my daughter to be my trustee in my power of attorney anymore. So, well, you have to talk to your attorney about that. And your attorney is going to ask you if anybody's forcing you to make this change. And the attorney is going to know your intention. He's going to look at his notes from the last time you came. So you need to have that relationship, right? So that somebody knows who you are and what you're doing and why you're doing it. And then when someone challenges saying, oh, the only reason you're taking me out, Mom, is because you have dementia. Well, now you've got somebody who knows who you really are and why you made that decision. See it?
So you say, I want to get people clear on that. You were the third named.
Right.
So in the document that the attorney wrote, they weren't co-trustees.
No, they're named in succession to each other. And I don't recommend co-trusteeship. You know, you might as well put two steering wheels on the same car. And we'll talk about that. But the idea is that in each of your documents, you're naming people in order of succession. If this person cannot serve you, then this person. If that person cannot serve you, then that person. Because life happens. And even though you name someone doesn't mean that they're going to be ready to serve you when your time comes.
So going back to Joey and Esmeralda, I mean, it sounds like, I mean, would you say Esmeralda is taking advantage a little bit of Joey?
You know, it may be, but, you know, Joey has said that it doesn't bother him what she spends. And so I feel like these two people haven't really communicated with each other about their expectations. And then one day Esmeralda shows up and says, what happens to me if something happens to you? We don't know where she got that concern. Maybe she listened to this podcast. You know, so the idea is that at some point, Joey, who is the income person, is the one who's managing the funds and so on and paying the bills, needs to think about what if he got so sick he couldn't review his bank statement. You know, a lot of people tell me auto pay. They got auto pay. I go, well, that's great, but it only works because you're vigilant and because you're looking at those transactions. So who's the responsible party if it's not you? Who's driving the car if it's not you? And Esmeralda's right to ask that. Who knows if they're going to break up at this point? She's got a pretty sweet deal going on. She likes everything else.
He's not the marrying type.
He doesn't have to be marrying. He doesn't have to get married.
Right.
But he does have to do the right thing.
But he's 52. He's never been married. And so I'm just, you know, your mind conjures up that he's been playing or whatever your mind wants to conjure up. So the loyalty factor.
Yeah. Yeah. But look at what he's done. He's provided her with $10,000 a month. He's provided her with a home. So she can't just assume. She couldn't go to a court and say, well, I was his girlfriend for 3 years, Your Honor, so I should get to have his money. That's not going to fly. It's going to be based on who he's related to or if he's actually made a preference known in his documents.
So that's a great point. If he dropped dead tomorrow and there's no trust.
There's no trust. There's no will.
In California, I mean, it's going to go all through probate, all be public.
Right, all be public.
Now,
and
he doesn't have children. He's never been married. So let's assume he doesn't have children. He's never been married.
But he might have siblings. He might have living parents. He's only 52. So in that case, part of the court procedure, part of the probate procedure, which is the court procedure to determine ownership after someone dies, means that someone's going to do a search for his heirs at law. Those are not his beneficiaries. Beneficiaries are people you choose. Heirs at law are people you're related to who you might not even know. And so those people receive notice that Joey has died. Esmeralda could say, you know, she could have a lawyer. She could ask for something. But unless the heirs at law agree to share it with her, it's unlikely that she's not entitled to anything. And they might look at how much she has spent, and they might look at how much money she got.
And I think that's a huge red flag for those that are listening. I've dealt with these cases. I think we both have worked these cases together where the Esmeraldas of the world are pretty much get zero. They are just really tossed to this. That's a bad word. They are moved to the side because Joey does have brothers, mom and dad still living. He's only 52 at this point. They are going to be named the executor or the administrator of the estate. And Esmeralda has no rights to any of these assets.
Esmeralda might actually be treated like a predator.
A predator. So if you're Esmeralda in this scenario, you really want to push Joey into an estate plan where she knows that she has some protection if something were to happen to him in incapacity or death.
And it's really hard to have those conversations. You might be upsetting your apple cart. You know, you've been riding this and it's been working out for a while. She's clearly socked away some of the money. You know, maybe she should talk to an attorney before she approaches Joey. Maybe she needs to figure out what she would do for herself if he decides that he doesn't want to do an estate plan. You know, I know attorneys are expensive. I know, but there's a reason, okay? They have a lot of value. One, none of us can be objective about our own circumstance. And two, you want to talk with someone who's seen a lot of these cases and have worked through a lot of these issues. You know, it's important that you have somebody with some experience, and then they're going to ask you some hard questions and help you process this. Ideally, Joey and Esmeralda would go to the same attorney. And they could talk about, well, what does being married look like? You know, how's that different than having estate planning? Just because Joey's never been married before doesn't mean he wouldn't consider it now if that actually would be more cost effective for him. You know, so there could be an opportunity for this couple to talk to each other. We hope. But at the same time, if you're just living with someone, maybe you've had children together, even having children together doesn't make you entitled to someone else's privacy or to their things or to give you control over their medical care. You know, there's a lot to estate planning that a lot of people don't know about.
And that's also going to lead into my next comment, and for you to comment on, is we hope that you heard this story and really it resonated with you in some fashion, in terms of that it wakes you up to do something. But it also, we would like to bring these stories to you on a continual basis. So Marguerite, where do you see you in 2025?
Well, I have so many of these stories, Ron. You know, I've written case studies for the last 15 years or so. I write a lot. I post a lot on LinkedIn. You can always follow me there, California Trustee on LinkedIn. And I really want to educate people. So I would love to do a show.
And I would hope, and so book.
Yes. So I've been writing for years. I have one book, Ethics for Trustees 2.0. At the beginning of 2025, I hope to have another book out, maybe two, because I have a lot of written material that I think would help people understand this more on an emotional basis as well as the practical.
Are you able to give the titles out on now?
No, they're not yet titled,
okay.
But we're very, very excited about them coming out. And if you follow me on California Trustee on LinkedIn, I will be posting about that there. And I would very much like to do a podcast.
I think we're going in that direction.
I have a name for it.
You do?
Yes.
Would you want to share?
I'd like to call it Plan for This.
Question mark?
Yeah. I think plan for this. What is this? Well, there's a lot. There's a lot of different possibilities. And if we plan ahead, we get to live a better life.
It's so important to have this done. As I say, Marguerite, I always say there's 100% death rate in the state of California. That's a little tagline that I have. Nobody gets out here alive. And to have peace of mind that you know, once you pass, obviously you're past, but that maybe your children will be able to celebrate holidays together because of your planning ahead of time.
Oh yes, I am a beneficiary of really good planning. Because my stepmother, Jane Lorenz, did such a good job. We do have peace. We do have a family relationship that's beautiful.
And there's probably everybody comes up to you and to me to say, because they know what space we live in and the dynamics that we live in. They go, Ron, you're not going to believe, boy, I heard this and my family is this. You have those every day.
Yeah. I see a lot of avoidable trouble. And so if I get to have that audience, if I get to have people listen, I hope to smooth the waves. I hope very much to help people have real confidence and real peace of mind, because that's what my estate plan did for me. And I have built a really amazing life since I got my first estate plan done.
So plan for this, look for it. It's going to be about real stories, real people, and real solutions.
Yes, very much so.
Marguerite Lorenz, thank you for joining us today on episode 2 of our journey together. And I'm looking for many more journeys as we take this on and really, I think, have a fundamental change in that estate planning is for everyone. Everyone, and it's now. And as our baby boomers age, that they will take heed and really have some peace.
I really hope so, Ron.
So
thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ron Greenwald Show. We really appreciate your participation. This topic is very important, so I encourage you to please subscribe and share on all the socials, and have a great day.